Okay, it's 12:30. We've crossed 100 folks in this session. I think we can get started. You can go to the next slide, Catherine. So first of all, we wanted to welcome you all to ForumFest again, and we're so excited to be part of the first sessions of ForumFest today and for this great day of learning and sharing and taking everything that we learn here back into what we do tomorrow and beyond. I'm Ruthie from the New Jersey Office of Innovation. I'm joined here with my colleagues Ben and Catherine, also product folks, and Andrew, a designer on our team. So just a quick context on the New Jersey Office of Innovation. So we're part of the state of New Jersey government. We work across many different programs and services in the state, trying to use best practices in how we build technology, human-centered approaches, user research, design, have all of these great tools in our toolkit to improve the way state of New Jersey delivers benefits and services. We also love sharing out with other folks in the ecosystem through talks like this. And we all collaborate on our platform team. So basically what we do on our platform team is take something that's working really well for a program that we're collaborating with that's serving residents or businesses and figure out how we can scale that out across many programs in the state. And we're going to talk about one of those products here. If you go to the next slide. Thank you. So we're going to talk about how we've been approaching building and scaling a feedback form for New Jersey government. So in 2023, we added a very simple feedback form to a website we were working on. This was a tool for folks looking for information about paid family and medical leave, I think specifically a maternity timeline tool. 3 simple questions, one quantitative kind of rating. Did you find what you were looking for on this page? Yes or no? And both of you click yes or no, you get this free text form. Sorry, this is the no flow. Sorry to hear that. What were you looking for today? Also call out that we have a link here. If you need help with your specific case, we do want to route you into that. But this is more like a feedback form. And then we also let people, if they'd like, share their email to be part of user research in the future so we can talk to them, understand more about their feedback and what they're looking for, how we can help serve them better. If you go to the next slide, you can see what this looks like for a user. And again, I just want to call out here, I think having that, one thing that we saw right away was having that quantitative yes, no snapshot into how well we were doing, how well we're doing now versus 1 week ago, 1 month ago, 6 months ago was really helpful for just kind of getting that baseline and making sure we're moving in the right direction. And then having that free text feedback was really helpful to get a sense of where people were struggling, where we could serve them better, analyzing that free text feedback to help us prioritize what to improve next, and obviously layering that in with insights from other folks, which we'll talk about momentarily, and then again, that email so we could reach out to people to learn more. You can go to the next slide. So here's where we're at today. We have a feedback form on 13 New Jersey government websites. We have over 400,000 ratings, over 90,000 comments, and over 22,000 emails from New Jerseyans. I'll talk about a case study of how we've used this feedback to make really significant improvements. So we added the feedback form in 2023 to the unemployment insurance claim status page. I also wanted to call out that we gave a talk at ForumFest in 2023 about the claim status page. If you want to learn more, I think it's on YouTube. So we added this feedback form to the bottom of this page shortly after we launched the page. I wanted to highlight some of the feedback that we were hearing about identity verification, specifically people saying, I've verified my identity several times. I want to know, if it was updated. Can I take this action while I'm waiting for it to go through? If you go to the next slide. So we went to our call center staff. Obviously, they are the direct line to people seeking unemployment insurance. You can see some photos of their desks, just I think gives you a sense of their personality and how they help people. And so they really helped us understand this issue better, the types of issues they were seeing, how they were helping explain it to people who maybe thought they were struggling with one issue, but actually it was related to this issue. So if you go to the next slide, that helped us collaboratively form some of these hypotheses that, people saw their claim was stuck and didn't know why. It turned out to be because they hadn't verified is one hypothesis we had. They didn't know if they'd been successful. They didn't know what to do after they'd verified. They were getting stuck during the verification process. And so after we started developing these hypotheses, and also we layered that in with other feedback from forums like Reddit, so really kind of getting that cross-functional insight, building off of that feedback from the feedback form, we started looking at different ways we were communicating around some of those key hypotheses we're looking to test out. You can see here an email, the page where people would go through the identity verification process, the URL it was hosted on. And you can't really see it here too well, but this is an error message in our weekly certification flow. Those are the questions you answer every week to be eligible for unemployment. We were showing people an error message that was not totally accurate with their specific situation based on how the system was set up. And so we were like, okay, across the board, we can communicate more clearly via email, maybe via the web, different parts of the flow. So how can we start testing that, figure out where we can have an impact, and how do we start getting at where people are struggling? If you go to after this next slide, so this shows a new email we launched. We actually created 2 emails, one right after you submit your application, letting you know that you need to verify as the next step. And I think I didn't say this before, but identity verification is a required step for everybody applying for unemployment insurance. So this is a key blocker we needed to resolve to make sure that people get access to their benefits. We also added an email after you apply. We added a call out to our claim status page. Initially a really quick and dirty solution, and then a much more API integrated solution. We hosted the flow ourselves on a state site. We used a short link that made it much easier for support staff to help out people calling in for support on this. And we updated our error messages across the board to make those much more actionable and clear. And what was really cool is the feedback form showed us that this made a really significant difference. I mean, this chart really speaks for itself. It really helped us right away figure out, are we moving in the right direction? Yes, this is making a significant impact. Let's keep investing in solutions that help on this. And we've stated about this baseline level of people finding what they need on the page since. So that helps us monitor, like, are we maintaining that? Are things getting degraded, et cetera? Degraded. And it also drove a lot of significant program improvements, 70% decrease in calls of identity verification, 20% increase in people verifying immediately after submitting, significant cost savings for the state every month. So this is just a case study of what we saw. It was really exciting for us about how this form could quickly help us get that snapshot of data, some insights, and help us prioritize our roadmap accordingly. So we open sourced the code, and then we kind of kept adding it to different sites. And then this spring, we had a really exciting opportunity to get the form on the newjersey.gov homepage. Again, this is like the front door for many New Jerseyans interacting with their state government. And so we, and the state is thinking about how can we make this page clearer, easier to navigate and understand, and kind of really looking to get that immediate feedback from residents on this page. So we definitely wanted to take advantage of that opportunity to get the feedback form in front of many more folks in the state and really help us hear from more New Jerseyans. But it also gave us a really great opportunity to take a step back and think about kind of how do we really make sure that this product helps us clearly hear what New Jerseyans are struggling with, what they want their government to do, and how do we make that feedback actionable. So I'm going to hand it off to Ben to talk through that a little bit more.
Awesome. Thanks, Ruthie. After we got the feedback widget on the newjersey.gov sites, it's really like the homepage for the state. We took a look at how much of the web traffic across the state we were covering with the feedback widget, and we discovered it's almost a fifth. And I joined the team just about 2 months ago. So between being new to the feedback effort at the Office of Innovation and also having this much bigger scale, but also clearly opportunity to grow, we thought it was a great time to think about where do we go from here, and in particular, how do we develop a vision around feedback? So we developed this sort of statement of where we want to get to with the feedback widget, allowing New Jerseyans, and I think eventually, the tool is already open source, but more broadly, folks interacting with their government to give feedback to the agencies wherever they interact with them online, and then allow the agencies to understand and act on that feedback to improve the experience of the people they serve. Head to the next slide. And so some questions as we started thinking about, like, okay, where do we go from here? How do we build out our roadmap? We're thinking about, like, what are the highest impact problems that we want to solve? And we had a hypothesis because we saw like 82% of the web traffic in the state doesn't get asked for their feedback. So we thought lack of adoption must be the biggest blocker in achieving our vision. And so we started thinking about, like, what are the biggest drivers of adoption or things that are blocking adoption? We thought maybe we need more customized questions. Maybe we need to make it easier to install. We need to train teams, or maybe it's hard to act on or analyze that feedback. And so we started a research process to dig into this. And this is where we've started. This will be an ongoing process. We started with some interviews, folks on our teams that have been working with feedback, as well as folks in agencies. I'll talk a little bit about some of the insights that we gleaned from that. And then Catherine will talk a little bit about like some prototyping that we've done to sort of test out some ideas for like how we might solve some of the problems we encountered. And then Andrew's going to talk a little bit about kind of the broader landscape and what we've learned from that, as well as some testing we've been doing to really refine our ideas. And this is a work in process, so I'm really excited to sort of give you a little glimpse into the sausage making. So as we went through the interviews, we learned a few key things. So first, we thought that distribution was a bottleneck, but that's not at all what we heard. It's really about empowering people in agencies to take action on the feedback that they're getting. And tied to that, manually extracting insights from lots of comments. I mean, some agencies are getting hundreds or thousands of pieces of feedback a month. In many cases, that's overwhelming, unsurprisingly. And there's a real risk that if you scale too fast, you collect feedback that's never acted on. So some of the direct quotes that we got were like, unsurprisingly, summarizing themes isn't easy. On the flip side, even though people are interested in themes and statistics around those, like what are the trends, they also want the rich data that you get from actual quotes. Hearing somebody's needs in their own voice is really important for motivating action. And we also, got this clear sense of like, it's an important responsibility to collect feedback. One piece of that, you could hop on to the next slide, that's great. It's really important that people across an entire team have access to the same data. So when we're capturing feedback or sharing insights or summaries of that, it's important that it not just go into a single individual contributor's hands. It also should be shared with their managers and their leaders, and that's a way to make sure that people are operating from a shared base of understanding. And people are using it at sort of all levels of agencies to craft narratives that demonstrate what issues are, so that they can build some support for making a change. And really hammering home this idea that having the data by itself is not the same thing as taking action on it. So our goal is not to capture feedback. Our goal is to better serve New Jerseyans. So as we were thinking about this, I think one quote that like really stood out to us was, there has to be processing of the feedback. Otherwise, it's like going to the buffet and never eating your food. You just take and take and take, and your plate just builds up and doesn't actually do anything. You don't get full. We really, in the early stages of the discovery, we quickly realized analyzing and taking action on feedback are the biggest problem for us to solve to maximize adoption and impact of the feedback tool. And we came up with a hypothesis for what a solution might look like. So to help agencies do that analysis, take that action, we thought they should have a tool that lets them see the themes or their insights that are relevant to their context, drill down to get supporting quotes, and get an overview with suggestions for action. And to talk a little bit about one piece of our sort of prototyping and brainstorming process for how we might build this, I'm going to pass it over to Catherine.
Awesome. So, like Ben said, we developed this hypothesis for thinking that's really modeled off of the manual process for how you would normally analyze and share out feedback. But we wanted to do this at scale, which means some type of automation, which I'm going to get into in a second. But the first question is, do we have enough information from the comments from the data that we have to even be able to do this? And so when considering analysis, I know from when I would analyze longer form user interviews, I kind of know what I'm going to get, right? I know that there's rich insights from those responses. I know that I could manually code it to really analyze and understand the depth of that information. And then I know how to share a high level report with top insights and actions to leaders, right? When I'm looking at feedback comments, it raised a whole bunch of unknown questions. Do they have enough rich insights in that information? How can we meaningfully analyze 400 short comments per week that are coming in? And also, how can these be used to identify those same top insights? And so here's an example, of what I could expect in like a qualitative interview, and B, what we get in a feedback comment. Just take a couple of seconds and think about which demonstrates the issue and shares rich data. If you're someone who was like, wow, A has so much information, you can't get that same quality of information or depth out of B, that was my assumption too, until I looked at not just this comment, but also all the comments that were coming in as a larger part of that pool. And let me show you how I tested this. So I specifically went in and manually coded about 100 comments from 3 different programs across key dimensions. These are just some examples, including, hey, is this a program and service delivery issue, like I can't reach the call center? Or is this an FAQ content issue, like I don't know the phone number to get to the call center, right? Is there a time sensitivity to this? Is it a cry for help? Could we categorize it as an issue or a bug, something that's confusing, or a suggestion? Is there a theme? And for these, I actually used multiple themes, tagging a single comment. And then is there a helpful quote so that we can pull that quote out and share it? So this gave me a really good sense of the data, specifically also that we didn't need to add more questions or collect more data to pull rich insights out of it, which was a big question that we had, which was awesome. And it also gave me an idea of a coding schema and rubric that I'll talk about in a second. But the other thing that coding comments manually helped with was the fact that we knew that we wanted to use generative AI and specifically large language models to do this analysis. But because I had manually coded the comments, I understood not just what comments were coming in, but some of the dimensions that we might want to analyze it. And that information will allow me to better audit what the LLM analysis does, and then also provide a future training, a set of training data to feed into a honed LLM prompt. And there were 2 different types of LLM testing that we did simultaneously, right? Because we wanted to understand how might we create a universal LLM prompt chain that we could feed all the data coming into from different programs, right, per program, and still get that valuable information. And so we specifically wanted to test 2 different types of approaches. One is testing this entire workflow that you see here. And another is specifically thinking about LLM generated themes. Can we have one prompt that then gets tailored specific themes for each program without us having to predefine it? And so the first test that we did was with the entire workflow. And this is the general prompt series that I did in a prompt chain. One was an introduction to the task, problem space, data collection process, those key pieces. The first thing that I did though was I actually wrote up that prompt, put it in to our internal LLM tool at New Jersey, the New Jersey AI Assistant. And then I asked the LLM to identify what needed clarification in that prompt so that it understood the premise of how we were collecting data and the context that we were working in. So I then rewrote the prompt, and then I had to go through that workflow process. So I asked it to review the data, identify potential dimensions for analysis, because I was curious what it would come up with, choose those top 10, write a rubric, and code the comment. Then I asked the LLM to actually redo all of the coding of the comments so that it could have a refined version of that, and then also refine the rubric that it had written. And then I had it write a general summary as well as an executive summary with the top 5 insights. It was really interesting. It came up with a decent approach. Essentially for us, this was a successful test because we were like, does this generally work from A to B to C? And the answer was yes. What we're doing next is really honing and defining what we want it to measure, as well as what we want these outputs to look like. But in general, it can do this, which was great. And then Ben specifically tested our second LLM test with themes and thinking about meta prompting. So what he did was he had the LLM look at the data, generate a list of themes, and then he had the LLM add those themes back into a larger prompt that he had. It coded each of those comments with a theme, and then it had the LLM actually assess its own output and improve the theme, and he did that cycle multiple times called meta prompting. And then he had it generate a summary with statistics. This was the result of that testing. And you can see the specific themes here. And this is pre and post a UI change that a particular team made, and you can even see those shift, as well as this feedback summary, which is a combination of what the themes that the LLM provided, as well as those quotes and some, at this point, some human drafting. But both of these, for us, were really successful in proving the point that we could use a large language model to actually think about automating and scaling the work while not losing as much tailored and powerful insights, given that we need to work at scale when you're talking about feedback comments on public-facing websites. And so the next steps with our LLM prototyping, because this is all things that we're doing in the last month, and we are in the middle of testing it, which is exciting, is really figuring out the dimensions of what we want it to analyze, and then us writing that coding rubric, and then using that to audit and train the LLM for future iterations and continuously audit it as it's live in the future. Also honing that LLM prompt to generate those tailored themes, and then combining those two so that it's like one larger prompt with those approaches. And then finally, we're identifying how users will find, view, and interact with this data, which Andrew is going to talk about right now.
Thanks, Catherine. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're currently working on. Some of this as recent as last week, some of it as recent as today. Mostly it's going to be about user research and what we're calling phase 2 of it. I'll speak a little bit about some things coming out of our first round of research, what we're doing right now, and a couple things that we've been learning so far. On the next slide. So coming out of our first round of research, we did a landscape analysis where we looked at a lot of different state and federal government tools, some private sector ones too, and we really just wanted to get a sampling of how all these different experiences handled feedback. So we looked at some of the patterns and features in gov.uk's feedback toolkit. We looked at other state sites like Utah's Customer Experience Initiative and mass.gov. We can look at some of those examples on the next slide. And what we found was honestly a lot of different things. So we have things like a dashboard that's highlighting content that needs to be addressed from mass.gov. We see two different examples from gov.uk, one of them showing feedback at a service level, and one of them linking out to like an in-depth survey for the website itself. The top right example is pa.gov's feedback tool, which is very similar to our existing one, but has some extra questions for a little extra detail. We also looked at some dashboards that highlighted themes, and also dashboards that showed like customer satisfaction scores and trend lines. And that kind of led us into the next step, which we can look at on the next slide, where we just had a lot of different features to explore. A lot of these ideas were really cool, really exciting. We honestly wanted to just add them all into our little widget. But we had to start making sense of all of the different ideas. So coming out of that exercise, we started seeing some categories forming naturally, and they kind of went in all these different directions. It was the types of questions we could ask, what channels are collecting feedback, where the feedback is stored, how it's being analyzed, and how that feedback is turned into action. So this screenshot here is showing like the brainstorming that we did, where we just put as many ideas as we could on paper. But we needed to figure out how do we actually figure out the right direction to go in, which is on the next slide. So big question now, coming back to Ben's earlier question, is where can we make a difference? How do we make an impact for our users here? In this case, the agency partners that are working with this feedback. So we came up with 3 themes for this round of research. We want to save users time, we want to make it easier for them to take action, and want to provide them deeper context and insights about their users. So within these themes, these are a sampling of some of the ideas we're exploring, like creating the themes like Catherine was talking about with the LLM prototyping, plugging feedback into the tools that people are working with day to day and not a dashboard, sharing feedback out with stakeholders, suggestions on content that needs attention, finding relevant quotes and understanding trends and themes in traffic. And I can show you how we're doing that in the next slide. So for our current round of research, we're doing a format called storyboards, where we're laying out these scenarios in a step-by-step panel format. And it's a way for us to use very, very low fidelity examples to throw out a bunch of different ideas. We're not really committed just yet to one specific format. So this is a way that we can play around with honestly whatever we want to. Currently, we're doing that 3 storyboards in a 45-minute session with participants. And really what we're looking for are reactions. So in this first scenario, we have a storyboard drawn lovingly by Catherine. Storyboard for Alex. Alex is a program manager who manages the website for his department. In this scenario, he is working in Microsoft Teams. He gets a channel with dedicated feedback that's tagged by theme. So in this scenario, we're testing those things that we've been talking about. We're testing theme generation. We're testing the idea of getting feedback in teams. And we're seeing how sharing insights within teams resonates with participants. In this Sun, we have Colleen, who's the leader of a call center. She reveals an email digest that highlights common issues and trends. In this scenario, we're testing the idea of reporting in emails instead of Teams, seeing what we can come up with in terms of generating summaries so that users don't have to go through each piece of feedback line by line. And we're trying to play around with that idea of prioritized insights, like here's a bunch of things going on, but this is the one that's most important for you at the time. We have the third scenario with Chris, where Chris is a program or more of a senior leader who manages multiple programs. We're playing around with the idea of generating PowerPoint specific reporting that surfaces insights at the program level instead of specific website or page level. So here we're trying to find the balance between summarized reports and rich data. We're trying to think about the idea that came up a lot in some of our earlier research, which is insights being aligned with how leadership is interested in this work. And yeah, these are the kinds of things that we're getting reactions to right now. So the research goals are kind of what we've been talking about. We're really just trying to find if any of these formats resonate with users. We're trying to see just what kind of value the themes can bring into their day-to-day tasks as well. Are these themes actually going to help them save time? Is there a certain way that these themes can be set up or interacted with that'll be helpful to them? Still trying to find the right metrics or trends to show to folks. But really, we're just trying to find out what is engaging. Right now, there's a lot of ideas, but if they're not resonating with folks, it doesn't matter how powerful some of these tools are. So for what's next, we're continuing storyboard testing. We did 2 storyboard tests last week. We have more this week. We're continuing to synthesize this research. So these insights are coming in day by day. But so far, we've heard some pretty positive reactions from one of our participants about getting that feedback outside of a dashboard and into channels like Teams. I think that participant spoke to like being just concerned about anyone opening up an email or clicking out to another link. But we've also been hearing something we heard from our first round of research, which is that these barriers are more process and program oriented. They're not necessarily the result of a feature set not being rich enough. So it seems like some things are trending on the right track, but we still are planning on talking to more people to get a more comprehensive picture. The LLM iteration is still going on. We're still refining that and figuring out the best way to put that together. And all of this is really just bubbling up to the last bullet point, which is what does an MVP look like? What is the minimum viable product that we can build that will deliver real impact to our users? And with that, thank you all for your time and attention. I think, Ben, you're going to handle the Q&A.
Yeah. Thanks for all the confetti, everyone. I've been answering some of the questions in the Q&A. If I didn't give you an answer that like really responds to your question, please hop in with a follow-up. We think that the slide deck, there's one that I haven't responded to. We have to like get some clearance to share the slide deck, but our plan is to get it shared, so it'll be in the resources. And I'm gonna get us started with this question from Rachel. Where did the ask for this feedback form originate, and what type of bind do you need to build it and use it as you have? And I'll just kick that off, but then I'll pass it to Ruthie. I think, an interesting challenge is that there's a big range that you see in agencies in terms of their eagerness for feedback and their readiness to deploy it. Sometimes you'll have people be like, we know that people with feedback, we really want to capture it, we want to do something with it, which is awesome. They have that like human-centered drive and they just need an avenue to do it. You also get agencies that have concerns about it because they're like, this is going to open a floodgate that we'll have to deal with, which I think is a fair concern. But it really becomes about, I think, showing them the impact that it can have. And also, I think a technique that we've heard from talking to the leaders and agencies is making sure to highlight the good stuff that you do come across. Even though, as I mentioned in the Q&A, sometimes this will skew towards the negative because people who have a bad experience are more likely to share their feedback. We still get positive feedback. And that like surfacing those quotes to the team to be like, hey, you're in the trenches every day and you get this, stuff like this, like we see stuff like, this is so much better than it used to be, or like I talked to X person and they were so awesome. Like those really matter. So sharing, like on the one hand, like it's possible to do things with this and here are the good things can be really impactful. This does tie back a little bit to making sure that folks are empowered. So that's a whole other can of worms, but really thinking about that as you go into capturing feedback is important. That, Ruthie, what did I miss?
Yeah, that covers a lot of what I wanted to say. I think just additional things I'll add. So obviously having a pilot that you can start to learn from makes a huge difference. And so just want to call out the many folks we've worked with at the Department of Labor across all roles and their enthusiasm for getting feedback from the public to help improve services and get that data to help us understand, are we moving in the right direction? So a lot of the proof points that we did with that agency, for example, helped us gather stories like the case study I shared that we can then go and tell someone else about. And obviously, when you see those real tangible impacts directly to residents, like you can see by that chart, if you remember, kind of the increase in people finding what they were looking for on the page, which, charts like that have been used in budget hearings in the state, as well as things like reduction in support calls that, is really meaningful, cost savings, all kinds of key metrics that folks care a lot about who are running programs, who are, in the call centers. So getting those proof points in one program can help us go and talk to another one and share, like, we saw someone else do this. It worked pretty well. Like, maybe we can try it. Here's a light lift. And then I guess the other thing I just wanted to call out is, in the work that we do, there's a lot of data being, that we can look at to understand kind of program health metrics, website health metrics. Sometimes it's hard to pull those out. And so something really easy, like this feedback form, very easy to collect this data, very easy to kind of get that initial snapshot. It really helps us get data immediately to figure out, are we moving in the right direction or do we need to, drive the car in a different direction? So yeah, just calling that out as well.
Okay. Here's one that I answered, but I'm curious if other folks have additional thoughts on this about, like, do you have issues with self-selection bias with people completing the yes/no feedback? So people who are frustrated being more likely to respond than people that are content. My take was like, yes, we do see it skewing negative, but that's useful. But I'm curious if other folks have stuff they want to add, because I think it's a great question and there's a lot to talk about there.
For me, whenever you're asking for feedback with this type of mechanism, you will always see self-selection bias of someone who needs to share something or thinks that it will be helpful, even if they're frustrated. And for me, one, it is really still helpful to see that and kind of know that that's the reality of how feedback is coming in, and it's always going to have that bias, because they're still telling, like, this person is someone that we're serving as part of the state government, right? Like, they're in New Jersey, and that we're doing to try to serve our jobs, to try to serve, and the information that they're giving us is still valuable and helpful. Even is this a cry for help? Yeah, there's a bunch of cry for helps in there that like, even just as a qualitative researcher, is hard to read, but it's still really valuable data for us to say, hey, this is an issue, or this is the priority of those issues, or like, the cry for helps are generally around claim status for getting a payment, right? Like, maybe we should figure out how to share and explain that more, so that even when people are in a hard situation, they're empowered and informed to know what to expect, right? Like, that's an example for how I would think about that. But at the same time, when I was manually coding that information, I read a comment that was in Spanish that was like, this is a super helpful page. Thank you so much. I now understand how to like submit this type of claim. And that was also really helpful. And that's like a type of comment that you can share with staff, even when they're getting getting inundated with frustration. And if you have a lot of frustrated comments on your website, the staff who's serving on any other type of frontline communication also knows and hears that in another way through whatever communication they're getting with the public. And so this is another avenue or channel or tool that we can give leadership to think about the priority of that as well.
I wanted to hop in and add a couple things to that too, speak to another part of the question. And that is that I think that this feedback that we get in through this tool is ultimately like one small subset of the overall data that our partners would be working with. They're also collecting things like Google Analytics. They might have other support channels, like an email address or phone number. So I don't think that we're considering the feedback comments to be representative of the majority of users that are interacting with these services. I think that they're more, to I think Ben's comment in the chat, more representative of just like opportunities for us to identify constructive feedback that can help us kind of identify things to work off of. I don't think that, at least in our side, we haven't been using that data to sort of represent user bases of any of the programs.
Yeah. Okay. Pulling up this one. What are some examples of the themes and insights and actions taken? Yeah, Reese, I don't know if you want to talk to some historical stuff, maybe to kick us off on that.
Yeah, I can just put, so in addition to that case study I talked about around identity verification. So actually so I think we added the feedback form to the set up the unemployment claim status page right around tax season. And so immediately we got a lot of asks like, where can I find my 1099 form? We added a link to the 1099 form. We saw a reduction in that feedback, like very quick feedback loop. It was all really easy both to put that into place and also just a call out that it's really nice to have sites and properties you can deploy changes to quickly so you can get that feedback loop and see if that makes a difference. So that's one thing that we were able to do with that claim status page, the 1099 form. I talked about the identity verification. We made a number of other improvements around kind of open requests for information and people's claims getting stuck there. And just a lot of people were trying to figure out why their claim was stuck. So parsing that out and again, bringing in that expertise from staff, helping people. They know kind of what the specific issue is and what it sounds like when someone is struggling with this. What they're really struggling with is that. So how do we kind of clarify that for folks? That's on that example. The NewJersey.gov homepage, we saw a lot of people looking to navigate information. We got a new search bar out quickly. I don't have specific metrics off the top of my head. I don't know if a team member does, but we saw a reduction in feedback kind of right away about the navigation issue. So we're really able to very quickly snapshot if it is making a difference.
Awesome. And I guess maybe one or two examples from the prototyping that we've been doing right now. So like on the NewJersey.gov implementation, we sort of we're testing the prototype to look at, here's the feedback. And then there's also a product team that was embedding with the team working on that website, thinking through like how might we make improvements. And so sort of at the same time, independently, they decided there isn't a like easily discoverable search bar on that site. Let's implement one. And we basically, our prototypes were like, the most important theme is that people are having trouble finding information. They implemented that, and then we reran the themes, and we saw a statistically significant drop there. So I think you can imagine a world where discovering the themes makes it easier to identify the kinds of changes that you want to make. And we've been talking a lot about like identifying the themes, but something that we're also thinking about for the future is like helping suggest actions. I think you need a lot of context for the action suggestions to be good, but it's something that we want to explore as well. Okay. And then this one, is there already general support frameworks, processes, et cetera, for the use of LLMs and Gen AI within the state, or is this a new use case? I think maybe Ruthie, I don't know how close you were to this, but we can also share, our team has done a bunch of things about this, but yeah, Ruthie, if you want to kick that off.
Yeah, so just at a high level, yeah, so when LLM tools became more widely available, we quickly wanted to move to create a tool that would keep data safe and secure within the state environment, while also making easy for state employees to use generative AI to improve the delivery of benefits and services in the state. We talked, the examples we shared highlight kind of how this can be impactful. So in July 2024, we launched the New Jersey AI Assistant. I think we've linked to it in the chat and Q&A. So we launched that along with responsible use of AI training, which we developed and released in New Jersey, and through Innovate US have released, so I think about 25 other states and localities are using that now as well for responsible AI training for their staff. So training is a really key piece, solutions that are kind of general purpose. We also have access to Bedrock and all of the models available through that, through our kind of state technology environment as well. Catherine worked on a project around modernizing permit language into more plain language using generative AI. We have a number of other pilots. So we've kind of like done these different pilots, and Catherine can chat more about that if there's time. But at a high level, like we have access to the tools through that we've set up in a way that is secure and in the right parameters for our state environment. We have training. We also do training directly with agencies. And so all of this helps support and make it easier for us to do this kind of work. Anyone else have anything else to jump in on there?
I'd say that in general, like the Office of Innovation is doing a lot around this, and also sharing and publishing what we're learning as we're learning it. And so if you go to the Office of Innovation website, I'll see if I can find a link, but I'm going to describe this just because we're going to run out of time. If you go to the Office of the Innovation website under like innovation skills, and there's a whole Gen AI section that shares not just generally what we're doing, but some how-to guides. I know there's one around a call center modernization and using Gen AI there. And so we're talking about large language models, but there's a wide variety of ways that the state of New Jersey is using Gen AI, and then the Office of Innovation both is doing that across different use cases, as Ruthie was sharing, but also thinking about this at a strategic and policy perspective through a center of excellence around Gen AI that colleagues of ours are in the process of standing up and leading. And obviously Beth Novak, as she's the chief AI officer or strategist for the state. So yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff. There are a bunch of different projects and also levels of implementation that New Jersey is thinking about. And if you can get to them through our website within the Office of Innovation for beyond just this use case.
Awesome. And then I guess to round things out, Andrew, I think you might be really well positioned to talk to this question about like the implementation and the design of the feedback widget itself. And in particular, I'm thinking about accessibility and design system stuff. But yeah, if you want to fill that one.
Sure. So we have the component as part of our design system, the New Jersey Web Design System, which is a fork of USWDS. The design of it is pretty simple. We just have this sort of states that Ruthie showed where we asked the, did you find what you're looking for? The yes or no question. Based on both those responses, the user would still be able to submit comments, which are stored in a dashboard that we set up with our partners. The tool also has a link to signing up for user research. And this pattern is something that I think that the team was referencing a similar tool designed by the SF for California teams. They have a very similar tool that they use for connecting with research. And yeah, we have kind of through the rest of the design system process, we've done some accessibility testing with it to make sure that it works well. We've made some updates based on like what happens to the tool when some of those services don't work and something times out and we can't submit feedback. But yeah, that's just some of the things that went into that process. I'm not sure if there's any more specifics, but we might be at time now, right?
Yeah, we are. So thank you all so much for attending. Thanks, team, for sharing your insights here. And yeah, please reach out if you have questions, want to connect on any of this. We'd love to chat with folks working on any of this. So thank you.